They say weddings are supposed to be the happiest day of your life. But that was before Claire stepped into the church, looking like a ghost I had buried 10 years ago, only to find her standing at the door, alive and devastatingly real. My throat closed up before the vows could even escape my lips. "Don't stop now," the pastor urged kindly, but all I could see was her dark hair spilling in loose waves over her shoulders, her eyes carrying the weight of memories I had tried to erase, and the subtle curve of her lips that once promised me forever. And here I was about to marry someone else. The day had begun with laughter. The kind of laughter you force into the air to chase away doubt. My bridesmaids kept me spinning, checking my makeup, fluffing the gown's endless layers, reminding me I was a lucky woman. Daniel, my fiancé, was waiting at the altar with his quiet smile. He had always been safe, stable, and kind. The kind of man my parents had always prayed for. So why did the sight of Claire now feel like a cruel trick from the universe? I hadn't seen her since the night we destroyed each other. I was 23 then, full of fire and fear, too young to understand that love wasn't meant to be a war. Claire had been my everything, my best friend, my fiercest critic, my lover. We burned bright, but the world around us was darker, less forgiving. When my parents found out, they tore me apart with their disappointment. And I let them. I left her crying in the rain that night, begging me not to walk away. 10 years. 10 years of silence. 10 years of swallowing guilt every time I thought of her. 10 years convincing myself that I had done the right thing. And then today. The ceremony paused, everyone whispering as Claire moved forward. My heart pounded so loudly I thought everyone could hear it. Daniel's brows furrowed, confusion flickering across his face. He didn't know her. He didn't know this story. But the way she looked at me told everyone enough. "Emily," she whispered, her voice breaking the silence. That name on her lips, it was like hearing it for the first time again. The sound of my own name carried back to me with the warmth of summer nights and stolen kisses, the scent of her skin, the softness of her laugh. I should have looked away. I should have stood tall and finished my vows. But instead my body betrayed me. My hands trembled, and the bouquet slipped through my fingers, scattering roses across the polished wooden floor. The church gasped. Rewind. To tell you why this moment mattered. Why Claire's sudden appearance threatened to shatter everything I had built. You need to understand the story of us. We met in college, two girls with wild dreams and restless hearts. Claire was older, already 23 when I was a sophomore. She carried herself with confidence, like the world bent for her when she walked. She painted murals on old brick walls and wrote poetry on napkins at coffee shops. I was cautious, always careful, the dutiful daughter of conservative parents in a small Midwestern town. She saw through me though. Saw the way I pretended, the way I laughed too quickly in groups but fell silent in the dark. "You're more than what you let them see," she told me once, her hand grazing mine under the library table. Terrified me. It thrilled me. Our love grew in secret, in whispered phone calls after midnight and long drives where the horizon was our only witness. She loved like a storm, reckless, consuming, unafraid of destruction. And I loved her back, but I also loved my parents' approval, the idea of a neat future, the safety of tradition. The night everything fell apart, she had asked me to move in with her. We could start fresh somewhere else. Just us. I remember the look on her face when I said no. When I told her I couldn't. When I chose fear over love. The rain poured down like punishment as she screamed, "One day you'll regret this." She was right. And now, 10 years later, she stood before me, not as a ghost, but as a reminder of every choice I had made and every piece of myself I had buried. The pastor cleared his throat awkwardly. Daniel shifted uncomfortably beside me. The guests looked between us like watching a car crash in slow motion. Claire didn't care. Her eyes never left mine. "You look beautiful," she said softly, and the words stabbed deep, because she had always been the first to say them. Always before anyone else noticed. I wanted to scream at her. To ask her why she came. To ask her if she had waited all these years just for this moment to ruin me. But beneath the anger was something else. Something I couldn't admit in front of everyone. Relief. Relief that she was here, alive, still loving me in the only way she knew how, messy, impossible, untamed. Later, people would whisper about that day. About how the bride froze at the altar. About how the ex-lover appeared like a scene from a movie. They would gossip, speculate, even romanticize. But none of them would understand the war inside my chest. Because the truth was simple. I still loved her. Even as Daniel took my hand, steadying me, whispering, "Emily, are you okay?" Even as the pastor tried to continue, even as my parents shifted uncomfortably in their pew, the truth screamed louder than all of it. Claire's presence was a confession I had never dared to make. That night, after the ceremony collapsed into chaos, I found her standing outside under the string lights, smoking the way she used to when she was nervous. She looked older, yes, but not broken. Her beauty had deepened, her eyes wiser, her smile sadder. "You shouldn't have come," I said, though my voice cracked. "I had to," she replied simply. "I couldn't let you marry him without seeing you one last time. You ruined everything. Or maybe I saved you." The silence between us was unbearable. 10 years stretched wide and unkind, but under it, the same current pulled us together. "You think this is fair?" I whispered. "You think showing up now makes up for all the pain?" Her lips curved into a smile, soft, tired. "No. But I had to remind you of who you are." And just like that, the walls I had built trembled. The wedding never finished. People left in confusion. Daniel, heartbroken, told me he deserved someone who could love him fully, and he was right. My parents were furious, ashamed. I didn't have the courage to face them yet. But I did have the courage to follow Claire when she walked away that night. The city lights blurred as we drove in silence. Finally, parked by the river where we used to sit as kids dreaming about futures that never came true, she turned to me. "You're 33 now," she said. "Do you still want to live by their rules? Or do you finally want to live for yourself?" I cried then, not because of her words, but because I had been waiting 10 years to hear them again. And in the dark, with the water shimmering like broken glass, I leaned into her. Her kiss tasted the same, like hope, like defiance, like home. That was the beginning of everything again. Or maybe it was the first time we were finally ready. The river never changed. 10 years had passed, and yet the same smell of damp earth and iron clung to the water. The same reflection of lights shimmered like restless stars. It was where Claire and I had once carved our names into the old wooden railing of the pier, swearing we'd never forget each other. And yet, I had forgotten. I had forced myself to forget. Now here we were again. My wedding gown was stained, the silk ruined by grass and gravel as I sat cross-legged beside her. Hair undone, mascara smudged across my face. Claire smoked silently, her gaze fixed on the water, letting the smoke curl into the night. "Do you regret it?" she asked suddenly, her voice low, almost fragile. "What?" I croaked, my throat raw from holding back too many screams all day. "Walking away. Choosing them over me." The words sliced through me. My chest tightened. I wanted to lie to protect myself, but sitting there with her I couldn't. "Yes," I whispered. "Every single day." Her head turned then, her eyes glistening under the dim glow of the street lamp. I had expected anger, triumph, something sharp. Instead I saw grief. "Then why didn't you come back?" she asked. "Because I was a coward. Because I thought time would erase her. Because I wanted to believe I could mold myself into the daughter my parents wanted. Because I thought I could love Daniel enough to fill the hole she left. But none of that mattered now." "I thought you hated me," I said softly. "I tried." Her lips curved into the faintest smile, one that hurt more than any slap. "God, Emily, I tried everything to hate you. But I couldn't. Not really." My breath hitched. And in that moment I realized something terrifying. I had been waiting for her to say that for 10 years. The night stretched on, silence filling the spaces words couldn't. I lay back on the grass, the cold seeping into my skin, staring at the sky. "What do we do now?" I murmured. Claire flicked her cigarette into the river and lay down beside me, her shoulder brushing mine. That single touch sent a shiver down my spine. "Now," she said after a long pause, "we figure out if we're brave enough this time." Brave. The word haunted me in the days that followed. Because bravery wasn't just about facing the world, it was about facing myself. The fallout from the wedding was brutal. My parents wouldn't look at me. My mother cried on the phone, begging me to reconsider, to salvage my reputation, to find Daniel and apologize. My father's silence was worse than anger. He had always been my rock, but now he treated me like a stranger. Daniel's family called me selfish, cruel. Maybe they were right. Maybe leaving him at the altar was unforgivable. And yet, every time doubt clawed at me, I remembered the way Claire had looked at me by the river. Like I was still worth fighting for. Like I was still hers. Claire and I met again the next night. Not planned, not orchestrated, just inevitable. She waited outside my apartment in her beat-up Chevy, the same car she had driven in college. "Get in," she said simply, and I did. We drove with no destination, just like we used to. Music filled the silence, old rock ballads she loved, the kind I used to roll my eyes at but secretly memorized. "Where did you go all these years?" I asked finally. "Everywhere," she replied, her eyes never leaving the road. "New York, Chicago, Portland. I painted, I waited tables, I fell in love with the wrong people. But no matter where I went, I always ended up back here." "Why?" "Because this is where you are." The words nearly undid me. My chest ached with the weight of them. We ended up at her apartment, small, cluttered, but alive with color. Canvases leaned against every wall. Half-finished paintings scattered across the floor. The air smelled of turpentine and lavender. "This is you," I said, running my fingers along the edge of a canvas filled with fiery reds and stormy blues. She shrugged. "It's survival. Art is the only way I know how to bleed without dying." Her vulnerability gutted me. I had thought she had moved on, built a new life without me. But standing there in her chaos, I realized she had been carrying me all along, hidden in every stroke of paint. And I couldn't stop myself. I stepped closer, brushing the hair from her face, my fingers trembling. Her eyes closed as if bracing for impact. "Emily." "I shouldn't," I whispered. "Then don't," she said, but her breath hitched, betraying her. I kissed her anyway. It wasn't soft, wasn't tender. It was desperate, raw, the kind of kiss that belonged to people who had waited far too long. She pulled me into her arms, her hands gripping my back like she was afraid I'd vanish again. I melted into her, into the fire we had once set ablaze. 10 years disappeared in a single moment. But love reborn isn't simple. The next morning, I woke tangled in her sheets, the sunlight spilling across her bare shoulder. She was already awake, sketching something in her notebook, her hair messy, her skin glowing. "What are you drawing?" I asked groggily. "You," she said without looking up. My heart clenched. For a moment it felt like we were 20 again, fearless and invincible. But then my phone buzzed on the nightstand. My mother. My father. A dozen missed calls. Reality crashing back. Claire saw the look on my face and sighed. "You still care what they think." "They're my family," I whispered. "And what am I?" she asked quietly. I had no answer. Days turned into weeks. We tried to exist in a bubble, stealing nights together, sharing laughter, rediscovering the parts of ourselves we had lost. But the world pressed in, relentless. My parents cut me off financially, refused to let me visit. My job grew tense as coworkers whispered about the ruined wedding. Strangers online spread rumors calling me selfish, cruel, unstable. And Daniel. He left town, his silence heavy with wounds I couldn't heal. Guilt weighed on me. But every time I looked at Claire, I knew I had made the only choice I could live with. Yet fear lingered. Fear that I wasn't strong enough this time. Fear that the world would crush us again. One night, after another fight with my mother, I broke down. Claire held me on the floor of her studio, rocking me as I sobbed into her chest. "I can't lose them," I cried. "You won't," she said firmly, her fingers threading through my hair. "But you can't lose yourself either." "I don't know how to be both." "Then let me teach you," she whispered. Her certainty terrified me, because for once I wanted to believe her. That was the difference between then and now. 10 years ago, fear won. Now, at 33, maybe I could finally choose love. Love is never quiet. It demands to be heard, to be seen, to be lived out loud. But for weeks I tried to love Claire in silence, behind closed doors, in stolen moments. It wasn't enough. Every time I walked through the city with her, fear gnawed at me. Would someone recognize me, whisper behind my back? Would my parents hear about it and cut me off further? Would the past repeat itself? Claire noticed. Of course she did. She always did. One evening, as we sat on her fire escape watching the lights flicker on across the city, she finally said, "I can't keep being your secret." The words hit me like a stone. I swallowed hard. "I'm trying, Claire. I'm trying to figure it out." Her gaze softened, but there was steel in her voice. "I've spent 10 years waiting for you. I can't spend the rest of my life hiding from the world. I love you, Emily, but I need you to love me out loud. Tears pricked my eyes. She wasn't asking for much, just the truth. But the truth came with consequences. The breaking point came at a family dinner. My parents had invited me, perhaps hoping I'd show up alone, repentant, ready to beg for forgiveness. Instead, I brought Claire. The silence at the table was suffocating. My mother's fork clattered against her plate. My father's jaw tightened. My younger brother stared at us wide-eyed, as if watching a storm roll in. "This is Claire," I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. "She's the woman I love." My mother's face crumpled. My father stood abruptly, his chair screeching against the hardwood floor. "Get out," he said. The words shattered something in me. For 33 years I had lived for their approval. And now in one breath it was gone. I felt Claire's hand slip into mine under the table. Warm, solid, real. And in that moment I realized I wasn't losing everything. I was gaining her. The weeks that followed were brutal. My parents cut ties completely. Some friends drifted away. Strangers online continued to whisper. But through it all, Claire stayed. She painted me sometimes angry, sometimes radiant, sometimes broken. Her canvases filled with my face, my body, my chaos. One night, standing in her studio surrounded by versions of myself I barely recognized, I asked, "Why me? After everything I've done to you, why still me?" She set her brush down, crossed the room, and cupped my face in her paint-stained hands. "Because you're worth it," she said simply. The tears came before I could stop them. Summer arrived, and with it a strange kind of peace. Without my family's expectations, without Daniel's shadow, without the weight of pretense, I began to breathe differently. Freer. Claire and I traveled small trips at first. A weekend in Chicago, walking along the lakefront. A drive to the mountains, camping under the stars. We laughed more, fought less. Slowly, I began to believe we could actually build a life together. But then came the offer. A gallery in New York had seen Claire's work and wanted to feature her paintings. It was the opportunity she had dreamed of for years. "You have to go," I told her. She shook her head. "Not without you." The old fear returned, gnawing at me. New York meant exposure. It meant being seen, judged, known. But it also meant her dream, her future. "Claire," I whispered, my voice trembling. "I can't be the reason you stay small." Her eyes searched mine. "And what about you? Will you stay small without me?" The question haunted me. The night before her flight, we argued. "You don't get it," I shouted, pacing the length of her apartment. "If I go with you, I lose everything. My family, my job, my life. You already lost them." She shot back, her voice breaking. "Don't you see, Emily? The only thing left to lose is me." Silence. The truth hung heavy between us. I turned away, unable to meet her eyes. "Maybe you should go without me." Her breath hitched like I had struck her. "So that's it. After all this time, you're still afraid." When the door closed behind her, I thought I had lost her forever. The morning she left, I stood by the river, the place where everything had always begun and ended for us. The pier was older now, the wood more splintered, but our names carved into the railing were still there. I traced them with my fingers, remembering who I had been, who we had been. And I realized I didn't want to be afraid anymore. I ran. Through the city streets, through the crowded station, breathless and desperate. When I reached the terminal, Claire was already boarding. "Claire!" I screamed, my voice cutting through the noise. She turned, her eyes wide, her suitcase slipping from her hand. I pushed through the crowd, heart pounding, tears streaming down my face. When I reached her, I grabbed her hands, holding them like lifelines. "I'm sorry," I gasped. "I'm sorry I've spent my life being afraid. But not anymore. If you'll have me, I want to go with you. I want to love you out loud." Her lips trembled. For a moment I thought she'd push me away. But then she smiled through her tears and pulled me into her arms. "You always did have terrible timing," she whispered against my hair. We laughed, we cried, and when we kissed, the entire terminal seemed to disappear. New York was chaos. Loud, relentless, unforgiving. But it was also alive. Claire's art thrived there. Her work exploding across galleries. Her name whispered with admiration. And I found myself again. I found work, found new friends, found courage I never thought I had. We built a home together in a tiny apartment with creaky floors and too much sunlight. We fought over dishes, over paint stains on the couch, over the way she left her shoes in the doorway. But we also danced barefoot in the kitchen, made love until the sun rose, and whispered promises into the dark. And slowly, the scars of the past began to heal. Months later, we returned to my hometown for the first time. Not to beg, not to hide, but to exist. Together. My parents didn't come to see us, but my brother did. He hugged me tightly, whispered that he was proud of me, and told me he had always known. It wasn't everything, but it was enough. On our anniversary, our new anniversary, the day I ran to the terminal, Claire surprised me. She took me back to the river, back to the pier, back to where it all began. The sunset bathed the world in gold as she pulled a small box from her pocket. My breath caught. "Emily," she said, her voice steady but her hands trembling. "I've loved you for more than 10 years. Through silence, through pain, through everything. And now that I finally have you, I never want to let you go again. Will you marry me?" Tears blurred my vision. For so long I had been afraid of this moment. But not anymore. "Yes," I whispered, my voice breaking. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." She slipped the ring onto my finger, and I kissed her as the river shimmered beneath us, as if blessing the life we were finally brave enough to claim. They say weddings are supposed to be the happiest day of your life. But for me, happiness didn't begin at the altar. It began on a pier with our names carved into wood, with a kiss that defied time, with a love that refused to die. And this time I wasn't letting go. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe to get notifications about next videos.